You gotta get Spectrum.
Get award-winning internet for your business. Up to 4 months free when bundled. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
I'm Sharon Tazwell. Here's a look at your Spectrum News in 90. Hamas says it will accept some of President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan. Hamas has agreed to giving up power in the Gaza Strip and release all remaining hostages, but says other items of the plan require further discussion. The statement comes hours after President Trump gave Hamas a deadline to agree to the deal by Sunday. It's unclear how the U.S. and Israel will respond to partial acceptance. Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 4 years and 2 months in prison on prostitution-related charges. The music mogul appeared in Manhattan court Friday, apologizing to the judge for his disgusting and shameful behavior. The judge also imposed a $500,000 fine on Combs and ordered 5 years of supervised release after he leaves prison. Lawyers for Combs have said they will appeal the decision. And the federal government will stay shut down through the weekend. The Senate failed to pass a funding bill Friday, and there is little sign of progress on a compromise. House Speaker Mike Johnson announced the House will be closed next week for legislative business, meaning the Senate will be forced to vote on the same funding bill that has already failed several times. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Welcome to The Big Deal. I'm Errol Lewis, national political anchor at Spectrum News. This program focuses on the future of our country and its people. This week, the big deal is the government shutdown that right now appears to have no end in sight. Democrats have put health care at the center of their demands and say they will not back down until Republicans agree to extend Affordable Care Act tax credits, which keep down the cost of health insurance. Meanwhile, President Trump is using the shutdown as an opportunity to propose massive cuts to federal agencies and attempt to lay off federal workers instead of putting them on furlough, although it's not clear he has the legal authority to do so. We will talk about the shutdown from a local angle in just a minute, but first, here's a look at how top congressional leaders are continuing to place the blame on each other.
We are asking Democrats to do nothing more than pass a clean, nonpartisan bill to fund the government for a few more weeks so that we can get back to bipartisan appropriations work.
They can't bully us into just passing their bill, which does nothing, zero for American health care, and has not had any Democratic input, despite the fact that we've asked to sit down with them week after week and month after month. They will now see that, and we're going to be out there fighting.
And so he's got to show a fight against the president. He's got to show that he's fighting Republicans. And because they're playing political games and they're not doing what he himself said passionately as recently as 6 months ago that must be done, that you passed a standard bipartisan CR. Because he needs political cover, he is dragging the American people through this.
The American people are crystal clear on who shut down the government. Crystal clear. They know it was Donald Trump and Republicans.
Joining me now with more are two top political analysts. Jason Fechner is a political anchor for Spectrum News 1 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Susan Arbetter is a political anchor for Spectrum News 1 in Albany, New York. And Jason, let me start with you, my friend. I want to ask you about the local implications that you're already seeing because of the shutdown. What's going on out there in Milwaukee?
Errol, great to see you here in Wisconsin. We've got about 18,000 federal employees all across our state. No word yet how many are furloughed or will be furloughed throughout this process. I think the two big themes that we're kind of keeping track of in the Midwest right now, specifically here in Wisconsin, one has to do with food assistance programs. In specifically Wisconsin alone, you've got about 700,000 Wisconsinites that get food assistance in some way, shape, or form. The Department of Health Services here is saying that at least through October, it appears that funding will remain on track. So for those Wisconsinites receiving food assistance, they shouldn't have anything to worry about, at least not for the foreseeable future, at least for a few weeks here. The other big thing that we've had in Wisconsin, we've had historic flooding here, a major storm several weeks ago, roughly 1,500 homes across the state deemed destroyed or severely damaged. Through that process, President Trump has declared a federal disaster declaration for much of Wisconsin, tens of millions of dollars in play, FEMA on the ground in Wisconsin. So a lot of Wisconsinites are working to try to get those aid payments right now. And just on Thursday, FEMA announced that they were opening more assistance centers, specifically in Milwaukee County. So again, at least in the short term right now, FEMA operating more assistance centers right now, more boots on the ground here. So we'll hope that that continues for those that are looking for aid across the Badger State right now. Errol?
Okay. How about you, Susan? I know there are thousands of federal workers up there in the state capitol where you broadcast.
Yeah, there are about 71,000 civilian federal employees in New York State. In upstate New York, where I am, many of those employees, Errol, actually work for Fort Drum, which is a military base, which is also the North Country's largest employer. Fort Drum is located north of Syracuse, so about 3 hours north of where I am, near the Canadian border, where there really isn't much else going on. The fort employs about 16,000 soldiers, 3,000 civilians, and many of these workers are expecting to see a hit to their paychecks because of the government shutdown. But the real fear here is in that trickle-down effect. Fort Drum has a $2 billion impact on the economy. In fact, the fort is really the only big there. So as Fort Drum suffers, so does the surrounding region's service industries, landlords, gas stations, restaurants, and so on.
So now, Jason, according to the Washington Post, almost 90% of the Department of Education and the Environmental Protection Agency has been placed on furlough, 80% of the Commerce Department, 3/4 of the Labor Department, and 2/3 of the State Department even. What does that mean for people who need basic services from their government?
Well, how's this for an inside source? Let's talk about airports. I just got off the phone with my kid's sister. She flew from Dallas to Chicago to O'Hare and said so far it didn't appear that the lines were any longer, and it appeared that most flights were on time. So at least again in the short term, things appear to be on track when it comes to flights. But think back to 2018 and 2019. The longer the shutdown went on, the more TSA workers and even air traffic controllers called out, and you saw those lines grow and cancellations and delays grow as well. So we'll see how that plays out depending on how long this shutdown continues. We can talk about our national parks. About 9,000 national parks workers have been furloughed already. It appears that, at least in the short term, most trails and parks will remain open in some fashion, especially for those that collect fees. That's about 100 of the 400 nationwide. And then you get down to the brass tacks about, Veterans Affairs and Social Security. And when it comes to assistance programs like your Social Security checks, and for veterans out there, medical facilities out there, all of that appears to be on track right now to remain open. Those Social Security payments, those should continue to come through. It's a lot of the behind the scenes work right now. Call centers and assistance centers, those appear to be offline, and they will continue to be offline for the foreseeable future as well. So it's kind of really day to day at this point, depending on how services will continue across the country, Errol.
Okay, now, Susan, on a separate topic, the president this week brought together the nation's top military leaders and told them that he wants them to use American cities as, quote, training grounds for our military, and said, quote, we're under invasion from within. What do we know about whether it's even legal for the president to deploy troops in cities in that way?
Yeah, well, on its surface, Errol, it doesn't look like it. There are some longstanding legal barriers that bar troops from enforcing domestic law without congressional approval. One of those laws goes back to 1878. That said, the Insurrection Act, which we heard a lot about after January 6th, is an exception to that law. It allows presidents to deploy the military during a rebellion. But this question is now in the courts. And over the summer, after the National Guard was deployed to Los Angeles, a federal judge there ruled that the deployment was illegal. The White House disagreed, not surprisingly, and the Justice Department appealed the ruling. But think about this. The military using real bullets in real cities. The first time a car backfires and a soldier responds and perhaps kills a civilian, there could very well be riots, and that could be used as a pretext for martial law. Every scenario that follows is very, very scary.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you very much, Susan. Thank you, Jason. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll talk about changes to the H-1B visa program, which helps U.S. companies hire highly skilled foreign workers. That's next on The Big Deal.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
Spectrum TV, isn't that only live TV?
No, it's only all my favorite streaming apps with live TV.
Okay.
It's only all included at no extra cost, and that's the magic of math. Will this be on the test? Sure, why not?
It's only one simple payment for all our TV. We gotta simplify and win. Winning is equally important.
If not, more so.
Yeah!
Only Spectrum TV, fixed TV.
Being a cowboy, well, I don't know anything different. I had a very successful career. Life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally. And then I got hurt. I dug into mental health. I wanted to be better as a person. I start my day with a workout. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
We're back with The Big Deal, taking a closer look now at President Trump's immigration agenda. The administration has announced a new $100,000 fee per applicant for companies that are seeking to hire foreign workers through the H-1B visa program that will start next February. H-1B is a non-immigrant visa that brings highly educated and highly skilled workers to the United States to work in fields like tech, engineering, and medicine. Just last year, 400,000 H-1B visa applications were approved. Nearly 3/4 of them came from India, and about 12% came from China. Here's a look at the top metropolitan areas where a majority of them are approved to work, mostly New York City, Washington, D.C., Dallas, Texas, and Northern California. Since the program's creation in 1990, there's been a debate over whether U.S. companies are using cheaper foreign labor to replace American workers. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says that the new policy change will give employers an incentive to prioritize Americans for jobs.
So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs.
Joining me now to break this all down is Alan Orr, an immigration lawyer and the former former president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Good to see you, Mr. Orr. Thanks so much for joining us. It used to cost employers anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per applicant to bring over tech workers from India or China. Now it's going to cost $100,000 apiece. Can the president do that unilaterally? I thought Congress had the power to change immigration law.
So glad to be here for this important topic, and you're exactly right. $100,000 is not a fee. A fee is the cost of actually processing a visa. It is either a tax, which has to be approved and set up by Congress, or it is a travel ban, which needs to be adjudicated by the courts. It is in no way an actual fee. So that's the first level. Is this fee constitutional? Because it is an executive order and does not have the force of law.
Oh, very interesting. How will this, whatever it is, fee or fine, whatever you might want to call it, how will it impact the economy, especially U.S. companies? Because I'm thinking Amazon and Meta and Microsoft and Tesla really rely on these foreign workers, right?
Right. So we should think of the world as a global economy, and we know that many jobs don't have to be in the United States. So the first answer is if they could move the jobs abroad, then the jobs will be moved abroad and paid even a less wage and hurt the U.S. economy even more. Or this will discourage employers, small U.S. startup companies, from using H-1Bs, and that would run them out of business. It's important to note that for every H-1B in this country, they create 1.8 American jobs.
Wow, very interesting. I noticed also that, most of us think of tech workers when we talk about H-1Bs, but this would also apply to universities that hire foreign scholars. What would be the long-term effect of that on American universities? Would this be like sort of a brain drain from the U.S.?
Absolutely, brain drain. And there's also doctors, so don't exclude that need for foreign populations that are in these rural areas that sort of service these populations. So what it means is these individuals who are coming to the United States, who are being educated by United States schools, will then be turned to be our competition to the rest of the world. We'll be educating the best to send other places.
I mean, a lot of H-1B visas are currently going to foreign students who graduate from American universities. They bring millions into the U.S. economy, they create more jobs, as you mentioned, and many of these foreign students remain in our country after graduation. They start businesses, they go into the tech sector. The visa can be converted into a green card for permanent residency. What's going to happen when these young, talented people start looking at, London or Berlin instead of San Francisco or New York?
Yeah, the biggest challenge right now is China. China's actually instituted a new visa called the K visa that happened the exact same time the president announced this, and many of them are going to start to go to China rather than come to the United States. So it makes the pool drain a little bit further across, but also, once again, it's going to hurt our institutions because not only are they not going to want to come to school here because the visa options do not exist, they're not going to want to bring up the economy more because not just our students are foreign nationals, but many of our professors in these institutions are foreign nationals that may be using this visa category.
What have you been hearing from your clients who have H-1B visas? What are you advising them to do at this point?
So at the very beginning, it was very unclear who it applied to. It seemed to apply to everybody. So companies were already sort of getting the money to get people back into the country or move operations abroad. They're very scared. And what we're doing now is getting ready to sue because this isn't instituted in the right way. And the fee doesn't really levy what happens to the economy. Our dynamics are no longer one job to one job. When you bring over someone who's able to create an empire, like our Google companies or Amazon, they create thousands of jobs. So that's the angle of the H-1B, and that's the purpose.
Well, it sounds like you're making a legal challenge to whether or not this could even be implemented, but tech companies have reacted, right? Proactively trying to get around what might be a big problem for them.
So it isn't implemented yet. California already has a lawsuit pending that probably will be moot because it actually gone into operation yet. Tech companies are getting ready to pay the fee for those essential employees, but otherwise they're going to move these individuals abroad and have them work in other places.
Alan Orr, thank you very much for joining us. We are not done just yet. Coming up next, we'll preview the Supreme Court's new term, which starts on Monday. Stay with us.
The stories that touch our border affect us all. That's why at Spectrum News Plus, we don't just cover these communities. Our dedicated reporting team also calls them home. That perspective allows us to take an in-depth look, going beyond the politics, to see the impact on people's lives and what it means for you and your community. Balanced border coverage that tells the full story here on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all your favorite devices, exclusively on Spectrum.
It's only a game. It's only a little rivalry. It's only a ritual. When I come home and a few generations. You're always there. And only Spectrum TV includes all your favorite streaming apps with live TV at no extra cost. It's only a game. It's only everything.
What are you doing in there?
What's that?
I wouldn't do that. What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time.
And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan.
Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Thanks for staying with The Big Deal. We are days away from the first Monday in October when the Supreme Court begins its new term. Spectrum News is tracking a number of big cases on the docket. The justices will rule on the legality of President Trump's global tariffs, as well as his firing of a Democratic member of the Federal Trade Commission. Transgender rights are back this term as well, a case surrounding sports participation in schools. Another case is focused on whether the federal government can place limits on certain kinds of campaign spending in litigation that began with a lawsuit first brought by Vice President J.D. Vance when he was a senator. The justices will also hear a challenge out of Colorado on a ban on gay conversion therapy. They'll also hear arguments on whether a crisis pregnancy center in New Jersey, which was anti-abortion, was in fact deceiving women. Joining me now with a preview is Cassie Semyon, a political reporter for Spectrum News based in Washington, D.C. And Cassie, as I mentioned, the justices are set to hear arguments on whether the president has the power to unilaterally impose these tariffs on various countries. He has invoked a federal law meant for emergency situations. What legal precedent do we have for any president deciding an emergency in the way that Donald Trump has?
So we have a history in this country of presidents declaring emergencies in order to try and take a variety of different actions. Trump is trying to declare an emergency and institute tariffs. During the Korean War, for example, President Truman tried to take control of the steel mills and try and prevent a steel shortage. So the Supreme Court decided then that Truman did not have the authority to do so. And so this is a similar question to the one before the court now. Does the president have constitutional or statutory authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to take this action? And that's really going to be the question at the heart of this case that they're going to hear.
Okay. Now, another big case that caught my eye is the one that tackles how federal elections are funded and whether there are limits on how much money can be spent during a campaign. Walk us through that case and what's at stake there.
So the court has agreed to hear this challenge to a campaign finance restriction law. It brought this case by Republicans to the Supreme Court. They're asking the court to overturn limits on parties' committees spending money in coordination with individual candidates. So right now, under the current law, parties can make unlimited independent expenditures in support of a candidate, but they can't exceed limits on coordinated spending. If the court rules in the GOP's favor in this case, it could really allow party groups to pour unlimited amount of money into races and competitive districts, particularly into the ad. ads. And that could really be a benefit for campaigns from the spending aspect. Reading the tea leaves here, the court has been pretty skeptical in the past of campaign finance restrictions, particularly on the grounds of free speech. So in the past, if you look all the way back to 2010, for example, Citizens United versus FEC, for example, that case paved the way for unlimited independent expenditures by outside groups, the court viewing political spending as speech. So we'll have to keep a close eye on how the justices hear oral arguments on this later this year.
Okay, and as we get ready for the opening of the new term of the court, we have to talk about this so-called emergency docket, some call it the shadow docket, where the court issues emergency orders and decisions without oral arguments, sometimes without even an explanation. Since taking office, the Trump administration has requested emergency action from the court dozens of times, and the court has ruled on 23 cases so far since Trump took office. 21 of those were in favor of the Trump administration. That's according to Reuters. Is the president sort of quietly expanding his power while he has a conservative majority on the court?
Well, there's no denying that President Trump has had more emergency requests before the Supreme Court than previous presidents. President George W. Bush and Barack Obama, for example, only had 8 such requests over their combined 16 years in office. President Biden had 17 over 4 years. Part of the reason we have seen so many emergency requests is because this president has been essentially governing the government via executive order since he took office in January. So by virtue of that, we have seen more challenges due to those executive orders. When the Trump administration has lost in the lower courts, for example, he has turned to the Supreme Court to appeal for emergency relief. And the administration is strategically appealing cases where they believe there is a chance of a short-term victory. In some instances where the administration has been successful, for example, the court has at least temporarily supported the president's broad view of executive power. So we're going to have to see whether that trend continues in the coming weeks.
Okay, and in our final minute, the Supreme Court decided to allow Lisa Cook to remain a governor of the Federal Reserve Board until oral arguments, which have been scheduled in January. To remind our viewers, this is somebody who was fired by the president and sued him in response. Whatever decision the Supreme Court makes on whether her firing is legal, it's going to really have a major ramification for the central bank, isn't it?
Yeah, the president has the authority to remove a member of the Federal Reserve for cause. No president has ever attempted such action, but the president says he removed Cook over mortgage fraud allegations that predated her time as a member of the Board of Governors, and she has not been convicted of any charges. So that's why Cook filed that suit against the president, saying her firing violated the legal protections of an employee at the independent federal agency. An appeals court, as you mentioned, upheld her stay request, as well as the Supreme Court. And so if the court says that the president can ultimately fire Cook, it could potentially open the door for him to fire other board members without cause, and that could lead to real disruption at the Fed and within the financial markets, because the Fed is not just a stabilizing force here in the U.S., it's also a stabilizing force in the global economy.
Okay, a very thorough update. Thank you for being our in-house legal expert this week. Thanks very much, Cassie Semyon. And we thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week. Stay tuned to your local Spectrum station.
Friday nights, The Big Deal with Errol Lewis, where Spectrum News' local political journalists break down the most important issues shaping our nation.
Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening. So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Lewis Friday nights at 9 Eastern, 8 Central on Spectrum News Plus. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
There's an international travel plan with Spectrum that was an additional $10 a month as opposed to paying a ridiculous amount per day for roaming fees. This literally felt like my old phone carrier was reaching their hand into my wallet and just helping themselves to some of my cash. I like having no surprises when it comes to my cell phone bill, and with Spectrum, that's been the case. So it's saved me a ton of money.
Real customers, real savings. To see how much you can save, visit spectrum.com/save.
Weather can be beautiful, inconvenient, and at times powerful. And it affects everything we do. At Spectrum News Plus, our weather experts update you with the information and the context you need so you can better plan your day. And we do it every 10 minutes. We're the calm in the storm. Weather on the Ones on Spectrum News Plus, exclusively on Spectrum. And get your weather anytime on the Spectrum News app. Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with